We're here at the University of British Columbia at the 5th Biennial Slayage Conference on the Whedonverse, hosted by the Whedon Studies Association.
We have two objectives today. Number one, find out things that we as fans did not know about Buffy.
And the second one is to find out how researching things in the Whedonverse changes fandom, or if it does.
I'm Geneviève Balduc.
And I'm Amanda Conkin.
This is For Geeks Media
Academia.
Buffy is rescued. She's in trouble, somebody rescues her. The person doing the rescuing is then almost immediately shown to be powerless against whoever was about to kill Buffy. Buffy then steps in and saves the day, and in the last step, Buffy acknowledges being saved. Season 5, episode 7, Fool for Love. Buffy is impaled by a vampire. They call him Van Halen Vamp, and she's rescued by Riley. But then for the rest of the episode, Buffy goes off and talks to Spike, and we get the whole history of Spike, and she never addresses the vampire again. The other exception would be from season 6, Double Meat Palace, when there's an old lady with a worm who lives in her head who eats Double Meat Palace workers, and she paralyzes Buffy, and Buffy has no escape and is going to be eaten, but Willow shows up and chops the snake in half.
Well, usually Buffy and her friends are the heroes, and the bad guy is conclusively and definitively bad and must be stopped, and Buffy and her friends, well, they stop him. And in this episode, the evil is a spirit manifestation of vengeance that takes a Native American form, but isn't really representative of any actual indigenous people, but is more a personification of vengeance. And in their attempts to defeat this particular villain, every character in the episode gives their take on Thanksgiving, from whether it's an imperialist, colonialist, you won, congratulations, to I feel really bad about it, but I don't know what else to do. And no one has the right answer. Mm-hmm. But I think that by including her enemy at the table, by letting her former enemy, Spike, sit at the Thanksgiving table, there's just the hint of a suggestion that while she can't defeat vengeance entirely, she can show mercy to her enemies.
And offer some reconciliation.
And offer some, asylum. But he clearly needs it.
There was sort of two camps, right? There was like this camp that was really against it, that was like, oh, that made no sense, Buffy's gay, like what is this, why is this happening? And I was interested looking at how those responses are kind of like, there's this weird thing that happens where people don't want to be identified as homophobic, partly because I think the fandom around Buffy and around Whedon generally sees itself as very liberal, and so people want to avoid that label. So I was looking at the kind of work that people did to avoid being labeled as homophobic, even as they were saying like, oh, Buffy should never have slept with a woman, like what was that? And then the other part of it was the people who were saying, oh no, it's totally fine, like that totally made sense, like the kind of rhetoric that they were using. People were saying, oh yeah, she slept with a woman, but it doesn't matter because it shouldn't matter who you sleep with, which I find really interesting because it does matter who you sleep with. You have very different experiences, right? As a person, if you're queer or if you have relationships with same-sex partners or not.
Why do you think Joss Whedon, and Buffy specifically, is such a magnet to both scholars and fans?
That's a question that I've written more than one book on, so
so it's a pretty extensive answer.
Right. My own point of view is that the work that Whedon and company do, because it's a group of people. We talk about there being a school of Whedon. I think that it is art, and I think that that means that it has depth of meaning that's going to appeal to many people in many different ways. And I think that it is aesthetically beautiful. I think that it is socially important. I think that it is powerful in terms of the emotional effect that it has on people, but it also at the same time makes you think about why you have those feelings. And we love talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you come to this, I think possibly you came to it as an academic, but if you, where you come from, if you come from a space of fandom to academia, or if, and how that changes your relationship to the material.
I come to the material from a place of feminism, from somebody who's always had an interest in female super and action heroines and what is the female hero's journey. And when I went back to college in my late 20s, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do and discovered Buffy at about the same time. And this was kind of late to the game as well. And people had kept telling me, watch it, watch it, watch it. And when I finally did, I said, this is what I want to do. I want to find out the history of female super and action heroines. So I'm coming from it from both a place of fandom, but also, that deep down feminist desire in me to see this type of heroine. And so Buffy studies pretty much came first, but that has led me to pop culture scholarship, but from a generally accessible point of view versus an academic one, which, while it has its place, can also be kind of alienating.
Yeah, and I think similarly, I have always sort of considered myself political first, and then sort of academic second. And so sort of everything that I've done in the academy and sort of my studies and so on have been at sort of political, for political causes and sort of ideological analysis and so on. And so I think then that I come to both academia and then Buffy as someone who is politicized first and foremost. And I think that both then academia as well as fandom actually give sort of spaces for the expression of potentially subversive and liberatory politics as well.
What we're really interested in is how people come to Whedon Studies. Did you start as a fan, as an academic? How did that overlap occur?
There is a funny story about that. When, again, everyone has their own path as they travel, and in my case, I went to law school. Mm-hmm. And as I was preparing, in America, law school is 3 years, and then a 2-day exam.
Wow.
So you prepare for 3 years to take a 2-day exam.
Wow.
You spend the few months between your graduation and the exam date just frantically trying to cram this information into your head so that hopefully you can access it when you need to. I tell you this because I had a study buddy. We were both taking the exam at the same time. She was a huge fan of something called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I thought she was a very, very nice person, but clearly her mind had cracked under academic strain because the title is ridiculous.
Yeah.
The title is completely silly. It's very deliberately silly. Mm-hmm. But, and I didn't watch it until later on in that fall. We both passed the bar exam, by the way.
Congratulations.
And I'm in my apartment for my first job, and I'm channel surfing one night, and I come across this show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I can't even tell you what episode it was now. It was Becoming Part 2.
Oh, good one. Yeah.
It really was. And I just became entranced. I didn't know these, to use a North Carolina term, I didn't know these people from Adam's house cat. And why Adam had a house cat, I do not know. Ask my mother. But I just became entranced. These characters were so well-rounded. They didn't just have, they weren't just 3 or 4 word characters, you know, the kind that you get. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The greedy jock. Or the perky cheerleader. Mm-hmm. They're very well-rounded people. And what that means is that they have marvelous strengths and wonderful attributes. And they also can be petty and jealous and vengeful, and you're watching real people. And I became absolutely entranced from then on. Right. It took me a few years to get into the academic side of things, which actually happened after watching Serenity.
Oh, nice.
I came into the academic side of things around 2006, 2005, but right after Serenity came out, I started writing seriously about it. And that's when I discovered that Whedon Studies had already been around for a while.
Right.
But these are wonderful, wonderful people, and they do good work.
Signing off on this episode of 4Geeks Media Academia is Geneviève Balduc,
Amanda Conkin. Keep it geeky.